What are your constitutional rights when you are facing deportation? So this man named Miguelito was outside the country and feared persecution, had to cross the border, and while in the United States, he's confronted by the ICE and is being deported. Or this man named Santiago, who's married to Juana, they're living together, but then they got into a discussion and a fight. The police come and arrest Santiago and is facing deportation. Or Francisco, who's been here since 2007, he heard that there is Mr. President Trump, who was running to be a president actually. He's going to be building a wall between the United States and Mexico. Now, Francisco has a girlfriend that he's been trying to get into the United States for a long time, and he feels like with the wall being built, that girlfriend won't have access to the U.S. anymore. Now, knowing that he does not have the right to vote, he goes ahead and votes for Hillary simply because he wants Trump to lose the election. That will make Francisco subject to the removal based on that act. Now he's facing deportation. What are his rights within the Constitution? What you need to know is that whether you are a citizen of the United States or not, you have these rights under the Constitution. One is the right to remain silent. Two, the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And three, the right to advocate for a change. Now we're going to talk about the right to remain silent first. The Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution gives every person the right to not answer questions when asked by the police or a government official. Now, what can you say when they are asking you, you must answer the question? All you can say is, I wish to remain silent. You have to know that they will try to trick you, make sure that you say something. But keep in mind, anything you say, it will never help you in any way. So you might as well stay quiet and tell them that you wish to remain silent. It's for your own protection. Next, the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. The Fourth Amendment is supposed to protect you from your privacy from government intrusion. The police has no right to search you, or your possessions, or your home unless 1. You consent to the search. 2. The police obtain a search warrant, or there is an exception to the search warrant requirement on the case. Now keep in mind, without a warrant, a police or a government agent may not search your home or office without your consent, and you have the right to refuse to let them into your home or your office. Here's the tricky part. You must say it all loud that you do not consent to this search, because your silence will indicate that you consent or agree to whatever the police is doing or is about to do. We also have the right to free speech and assembly. When you're meeting in a public forum, which is a meeting organized by the government, you have the maximum First Amendment, and there are some restrictions that I want to mention here. As long as the meeting is in a reasonable time, reasonable place, and in a reasonable manner. We also have what we call quasi-public forums, or a designated public forum. Now that will depend on the permits and the place as well. We also have what we call private forums, which is a meeting organized by an individual. The owner or a person can ask you to leave or charge you with trespass if you don't leave. So knowing these rights will protect you from illegal or some other drama that the police are going to have to have you undergo. You also do have the right to advocate for change. Now, the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects the right of groups or individuals who advocate the changes in laws, government practices, or even the form of government. However, you got to keep in mind that the ICE can also target you in those meetings if you do not have the proper document in the United States. Now, what is a search warrant? The search warrant is a written court permission to search and seize evidence of a crime. Now, that warrant can be obtained telephonically in certain circumstances, and it will give law enforcement permission to enter your home without permission, without your permission or your presence. There are also instances where the warrant is not needed, and we're going to cover that on this slide here. Exception to the warrant requirements, we have weapon search within wingspan. If you're entering a building, the police or the guard can search you if you have any weapons on you, and no warrant is needed for that one. We also have exigent circumstances or emergencies. If law enforcement feels like going to court requesting a warrant from the judge will not allow him to stop a crime that he's currently witnessing, he will go ahead and arrest you or search you without a warrant, and that's what we call exigent circumstance. And there's also one thing that we know of the law, the plain view doctrine. If the public can see it and the cop can see it, cops will be able to legally seize it. They don't need a warrant for that one. There's also a Patriot Act. This is an act that was enacted to allow individuals to prevent acts of terrorism in the country without a warrant. Now, despite all these exceptions, you do not need to consent to any of them. You have to say out loud, I do not consent, because you never know if that will save you or not. Okay, you gotta know also that constitutional rights cannot be suspended even during a state of emergency or wartime. And they have not been suspended by the U.S. Patriot Act or other recent legislation. Well, so a person who's facing deportation will experience what we call encounters with the law enforcement. Now, we have three kinds of encounters that we have listed here. One, we have a conversation. Second, we have detention. And the third is the arrest. Now, we have some tips here for you when you're interacting with cops. You should keep your hands visible at all times. Try to stay in well-lit places with witnesses if possible. And keep in mind that you are probably being recorded by a cop, especially if you end up inside the cop car. Now, you do have the right to video or audio tape police in public as long as you tell them that you are recording and you are not interfering with an act or investigation. A conversation. You are under no legal obligation to have a conversation with the police, FBI, ICE, TSA, or any investigator. Now, if you agree to talk to them, you will very likely give them the information that they need in order to arrest you. So you might as well remain silent. Now, you can ask a question, am I being detained or am I free to go? If they say you're free to go, you can go. Now, the next encounter is the detention. The police officer may only detain you if he or she has reasonable suspicion that you are involved in a crime. Now, the reasonable suspicion here, it must be something more than just a mere hunch or a guess. The police must be able to put their reasonable suspicion into words under the law. This is called the articulable suspicion provision. So this is a little bit less than probable cause, but more than a guess. What can you say? Am I being detained? And you ask why. And if they tell you, whatever they tell you, you gotta mention it clearly, I do not consent to either this search or the seizure. What to do if you are stopped by the police? You gotta remember that everything you say can and will be used against you. It's always best to remain calm and in control of your words and actions. Avoid arguing with the police, but firmly assert your rights. Never run or resist, even if you think that the stop is unreasonable or unlawful. You can ask if you are free to leave. If they say yes, do so. You are not required to provide the identification if they are not detaining you, unless you are the driver of a motor vehicle. Either way, you have to say, I do not consent to the search, or the arrest, or the seizure. There's one thing I want to say here. It's easy to comply than complain later. You got to have that in your mind. You might think they're doing something illegal, unlawful. It's just so unconstitutional, but you got to comply first. and then you can complain later. While you complying, keep mentioning those words. I don't consent, I do not consent, and I do not consent. If you are not free to go, ask why you are being detained. Under the law, you're required to provide the name, your address, and date of birth if you're being detained. But you are not required to say anything else. It is a crime to give a false name when you're being detained. You must ID the name of the police, the agency, the badge number, etc. Now, you may be patted down, and any possessions within your reach may be searched, if possible, if the police reasonably suspect that you pose an imminent threat or serious physical injury. Now, I understand that some may experience panic when interacting with police, but it's always good to keep calm and possibly write down everything you can remember about the police interaction, because that will be your way to defend yourself as the law. And again, do not consent to any search. Now, the arrest. So you are going to jail. Jump the slide. The cops can lie or trick you. You gotta know that. They are allowed to use any other mechanism they can to get the information out of you. Many times they will tell you, or they will promise you that your situation will be easier if you fully cooperate and tell them what you want to know, but they do not have to follow through with their promises. You can ask a question. Am I under arrest? The police cannot move you unless you are under arrest. If you are arrested, immediately ask for a lawyer. Do not respond to any police inquiries. Now, people under the age 18 have the same rights, but normally they can only be released from jail to a parent or guardian. And if you are injured as you get out of jail, seek medical attention or take photographs. So let's say the police say, now you're under arrest, so you're going to jail. The police may arrest you if they witness you breaking the law. That's one. Or they have probable cause to believe that you have committed a crime. Or they have an arrest warrant signed by the judge for your arrest. Now, in certain instances, if you commit an act of nonviolent or civil disobedience, then you have broken the law, most likely in front of the police officers, and therefore they may arrest you because they witnessed it. Now, the arrest. You're going to be searched. When they're making an arrest, the police are allowed to search you to the skin. They may search your bags, and they may search your vehicle. You got to know that an officer searching your body must be of your own gender. The transdermal persons may be removed as well. Now, you got to be able to assert your right. That is what you are entitled to. You can say it all loud that I'm going to remain silent and I do not consent to any search, and I want to contact an attorney right away. This phrase immediately invokes your constitutional Fifth Amendment right, which protect you from police interrogation. Once you say these words, the police are legally required to stop questioning you. Now, even if you don't have an attorney to call, the police must provide you with a phone book where you can look for attorneys in the area. Gotta keep in mind, invoking your right to have an attorney present is a fundamental right. So let's talk a little bit about what we call Miranda rights. Usually, when you're arrested, the police are required to say this all loud so you can hear. They will tell you that you have the right to remain silent and to refuse to answer questions. They will remind you that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. They will remind you that you have the right to an attorney and to have an attorney present when you are being questioned. They will tell you that if you cannot afford one will be appointed to you at no charge. If you decide to answer questions now without an attorney present, you will retain the right to stop answering at any time until you talk to an attorney. Now, they will ask you two important questions. Do you understand these rights as explained to you? Second, knowing that and understanding your rights as I explain them to you, are you willing to answer my questions without an attorney present? Now, at that time, you will be allowed to demand your rights. What you can say is that I will not talk to you or anyone about anything. You can say I demand to have an attorney present before I speak to you or anyone. You can say I will not answer any questions or reply to any charges without my attorney present. You can say that I do not agree to perform any tests or consent to any searches or participate in any lineups except DUI tests that do not involve words. You don't have to sign anything unless your attorney agrees to it except the jail release agreement. And more importantly, you will not waive any of your constitutional rights. Now we're going to talk a little bit about special rights and concerns for non-immigrant or non-documented people in the United States. What will happen if you are not a U.S. citizen and ICE or Immigration and Customs Enforcement contacts you? One thing you have to know, that the ICE cannot enter your home without your consent. Consent means permission to enter. You do not have to answer the question or to open the door or speak to any ICE agent. Now, you have to assert your rights because failure to demand your rights may result in a waiver of your rights and ICE may deport you. Now, some of us might have family members or friends that can translate documents for you. You gotta know that you cannot rely on them when it comes to legal documents such as the one provided by ICE. You have to demand a professional interpreter. And more importantly, do not sign any papers. Now, you are not entitled to a free lawyer if you cannot afford one for immigration purposes, but you have the right to an interpreter who speaks your native language. Do not sign any documents without your lawyer present. Now, the ICE will not explain your options to you. So therefore, as soon as you see ICE coming to your door, call your attorney. Now, we're going to talk about deportation issues a little bit here. Now, always you have to carry your name, your phone number of the immigration lawyer that you can contact in case something of that nature happens to you. You must carry your immigration papers such as green card, I-94, or work authorization as well. And you will also have what we call the rights card that Gabriela and Mark will be distributing during this presentation. If you give this rights card to an ICE officer, you have done everything you're supposed to do within the law, and you don't have to say a word to the officer again. The rights card will read the following. I hereby invoke my right to remain silent. I do not wish to speak to law enforcement or any other person about my immigration matter without my legal representative present. My name and my date of birth are written below. Accordingly, I have provided law enforcement all information that I am legally obligated to provide. I do not consent to searches or tests of any kind, and I do not agree to waive any of my legal rights without my immigration legal representative present. You gotta say that I wish to contact my immigration legal representative immediately pursuant section 804.20 of the Iowa Code. I invoke my right to contact him or her without unnecessary delay after being detained, arrested, or placed in secure custody. So you have to have your name written on it and your date of birth so you can give it to them as soon as you get arrested. Now we're going to talk about deportation issues, some issues that we encounter when you are detained or arrested. For parents, you have to know that after 6 months of detention, the state is permitted to place your children up for adoption or terminate your parental right. So it's best for you to set up an emergency arrangement like sign a power of attorney, giving someone you know the power to care for your children in your absence if you do end up in the system. Now, you may be able to post a bail if you are detained. Now, how do you prevent deportations? You gotta do certain things to help yourself by not driving your car if it's not in legal compliance with driving laws, or don't drive drunk, or don't go to jail. Just avoid all those issues. We have some practical issues here so you can make sure that you understand it as you leave this place. If you are questioned by the police, you have the right to ask the officer if you are being arrested or detained. If the officer says no, ask the officer if you may leave. If they refuse for you to leave, it is unconstitutional. Now, if they say yes, you are being arrested or detained, then you have the right to remain silent. That's if you are being questioned by the police. Now, if you are undocumented, do not answer any questions. Say only, I need to speak to my lawyer. If you have a valid immigration status, show it to them. Do not say anything about where you were born or how you entered the United States. Do not carry papers from another country. If you do, the government can use this information in deportation proceedings. Let me just elaborate that a little bit. When you are arrested, you stopped by the police, they have reason to believe that you don't have the legal documents to remain here in the United States. They cannot deport you or send you out to a country when they don't have proof that you belong in that country. That's the country of origin. If you hang around with something like matricula card from Guatemala, they will very well know that you are from Guatemala. Therefore, even if you don't say where you came from, if they have to send you, they will send you to Guatemala. So try to save it in a place where no one has access to it. And more importantly, show them your rights card. And above all, do not show any false documents and do not lie. If police comes to your home, you have the right to see a warrant. Do not open the door. Ask the officer to slip the warrant underneath the door. And when they enter your house, just observe whether the police, the official search, is searching any other area that are not listed on the warrant. Now, if police comes to your workplace, the immigration must have a warrant signed by a judge or an employer's permission to enter your workplace. Now, one exception here, if it's a public place, there's no need for a warrant. In those situations, if they come to you, do not run, just stay calm. Now, what can you do if the immigration law enforcement stops you on the street or in a public place? You gotta remember that you have the right to remain silent and refuse to consent to any search. Okay? Second, if you are arrested by the police, a few things you gotta do. 1, find out who's arresting you. 2, don't sign any documents before speaking with a lawyer. 3, contact your attorney or family member. You may contact your consulate and ask for a bond. Now, what if you are accused of a crime? If you are arrested by local police, they might charge you with a crime in court within 48 hours. The 48 hours does not include weekends and holidays. If the 48 hours is passed and you are not charged with a crime, they must release you. The police may contact immigration to learn more about your immigration status as well. And then immigration will place what we call a detainer on your case for an additional 48 hours when the criminal court is done with you. That will allow them to also pick you up and then make sure that if you have the document, you stay here. If you don't have the documents, you get removed. Another tip is to develop a safety plan. What you can do is make plans of action with your coworkers. You should know what documents to carry with you and develop a plan to care for your family. You should find an immigration attorney and have a copy of all immigration documents.